Good day, everybody. This is the morning meeting on two-way. Dan, Sean, and I are going to take you through the day. Then we'll kick things around, and then we'll take your questions infused with all the peace, love, and understanding you can muster. If you're here on the two-way platform, want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. It might be a day where I demand that there be three new questioners or we cancel the show. So if you've never been on the platform before and asked a question and you don't want to risk the show's cancellation, I suggest you raise your hand. We've got lots to tell you about Biden and about Trump and about some other stuff going on. Let's get right to it, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Mark.
First, let's look at the White House pool today. It's a big day at the White House and for the United Kingdom. The White House pool has Politico is the print pooler, not Politico
Ooh.
Pro, the joke we always love to make. And then the secondary pool is the Daily Caller and then the Daily Wire, the couple of dailies in there. Sean, anything strike you about the pool today?
I definitely spans the spectrum. I mean, you got the Politico cover on the left wing, and then the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller on the right. So you can't complain that they don't give everyone equal access.
Yeah.
CBS even making a run in there. All
And
the
they're and they're in and they're in litigation with the president over an edited interview.
right.
Yeah.
Look,
All right.
everybody's
Only two events on the president's public schedule today, but they're biggies. 10
Mm.
o'clock, right when we're going off the air, he makes a trade announcement. That's, of course, as he put on Truth Social today, formalizing it, a trade announcement of an outline of a deal with the British. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then at noon, he and the First Lady do an event in the wake of the New York Times story about the First Lady's relative absence from the West and East wings. I know because I'm around Trump Tower quite often. She's here in New York quite a bit. Nothing on the vice president's public schedule that we know of. At 11 a.m., Joe and Jill Biden are on The View. And stay tuned for our Biden discussion because I think you'll hear some stuff you may not have heard before. Capitol Hill, Republicans continue to try to find a solution for Medicaid, for spending cuts overall, for SALT tax deduction, the stupidest public policy provision of all time,
Greatest.
and various other things that they haven't solved yet. The speaker and the president continue to be very bullish on finding a solution, as do we. I think I speak for the group because failure is not an option, but there's still a lot of problems to solve there. All right, gentlemen, let's start with the British deal. Um, uh, if you watch CNBC, if you follow the markets, if you look at the chatterers, even though this is not a final deal, and even though the devil can be in the details across on both sides of the pond, as people stupidly like to say, it seems like mostly the markets are saying bravo. Between this and the China talks, people are like, this is good enough. It clears whatever bar Wall Street has. But I continue to talk to people who run small businesses who say they're already seeing the effects of the tariffs. And so the market can go up. Maybe their 401k recovers a bit, but the supply chain issues are real. Dan, your thoughts on the British American PACs?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to see what it is. There is one set of reports that says this is an actual deal, like it's a firm, something to sign. The other says it's a framework and it's an agreement of topics to work on. I think the question then is, does Trump, in announcing the framework, hold down or suspend the tariffs that we have with the UK? Because I think why the market has stabilized and the market would go up is the expectation is these tariffs are going to come down over the next few months as more of these are announced. And then there's just going to be the question of what are we achieving? There'll be aspirations and then there will be reality. And we just have to see what it is. If this is a real deal and it really opens markets for the US, obviously Britain's going to get something. But anything that helps Americans, that's great. And Trump will deserve credit for it.
Sean.
yeah. I think this is bigger. The UK, look, the tariffs with respect to the UK are not that big to begin with, but why this is a big deal and why I have a big grin on my face this morning is that it's bigger than the UK, and I think that's what the markets are responding to. Everyone kind of expected India or Japan to go first. I've said before, India and Japan to me are some of the two toughest countries to negotiate when it comes to not just tariff but non-tariff barriers, and they pledge to the heart till the kingdom come and never deliver. So I actually think this was great because no one expected it. I think it's a prelude to additional deals that will happen, and I think this is a signal to the rest of the world there is a path forward to get this thing done. It's good for steel tariffs as well because there's obviously Britain there's a lot of big ticket items that actually said Israel probably is in the queue next. Again, it's more symbolic. I think when the non-tariff barriers, there's a lot of trade. A lot of it goes to deal with I mean, if you want to get in the weeds, there's a lot of diamonds that are polished in Israel that because they go through another country, they're subject to some tariffs and so whatever. But I mean, my point is, these are good symbolic things that show that there is a path forward, that the Trump administration knows what they're doing. And I think it sends a massive signal to everybody else that this is what's happening. I do believe, coupled with a successful weekend in Geneva, which, by the way, could not be more lovely this weekend, around the lake. It's just a phenomenal place to be.
Springtime in Switzerland. Okay.
Well, it's not just Switzerland, Geneva. I'm a big, when I was assistant U.S. trade rep, that's where the headquarters of the WTO are. So I'm familiar with the walk on the lake Friday evening.
World's best chocolate too.
But be careful. They close early. Early.
They do close early. Maybe I'm a knucklehead and everybody knows the answer to this, but is this the thing the president teased? Is this the thing he teased?
Yeah,
this is it. Okay. Making sure.
But let me so anyway, I think that this is a huge signal. And I think this part of the reason the markets in other countries are like, it created a massive roadmap forward. So this is, and to Dan's point, look, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but here's what I will say. This, if he has a successful 72 hours on the trade front, I think that you are going to start to see a lot of people eat some serious crow on Monday.
Well, but it depends what it is.
Well, but Dan, let me ask you about that because you keep saying it.
Yeah.
Who decides if this is good enough? The markets? Because the markets are going to just say it's good enough because the markets are so, desperate, but also they're very sensitive. Like they overswing to whatever way the trajectory is. So it's going to be good enough for the markets. It's obviously going to be good enough for Republicans on Capitol Hill. It'll probably be good enough for a lot of Americans because their 401ks will go back up. Who might not think it's good enough, Dan?
Well, I think the question for the Republicans and members of Congress and everyone is, as we like to say, the real lives of real people. If the tariff,
but in the short term, in the 90-day window, yep. I just don't think anybody whose voice, there are probably some people at Brookings, some scholars who might say it's not good enough.
You just said, Mark, you teased into this that small businesses are saying that they are seeing the real impact of tariffs. So if the tariffs on Great Britain come down,
but I'm asking you a different question. I'm not asking you, will this fix all the problems for the real lives of real people?
But if people still call them members of Congress,
no. What I'm saying is there's a different question that's a little bit processy, but it's not meaningless. There was when they said we're going to do 90 deals in 90 days, people said you can't possibly consummate full deals in 90 days. So then they said, well, will this be good enough to qualify as the tariffs are really a tool? They're not permanent. We're moving in that direction. Not is it going to solve everything, but will this be adjudged to be sufficient to check the box to say they're in track to have a coalition of the willing against the Chinese with meaningful deals against bilateral deals by that standard, not solve every problem. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, and I'm not arguing that there's no one who will find it insufficient besides some Brookings scholars, but my sense is, based on what's been reported, is this will be seen as sufficient.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know because I don't know what it is. Like we don't have any idea what is in this. Like not a single thing.
Well, the FT thinks they know what's in it.
Okay, I have not seen that this morning.
But I think here's the bigger, broader thing. We talk a lot about polls and ups and downs. If this goes the way that the expectations are, because Dan's right. I mean, we haven't seen text, but like if everybody who says they've seen something, no one's crapping on this, right? Even Politico this morning in their playbook said, quote, it's significant. And I don't look at the Politico folks as trade geniuses, but I'm just saying that like no one is poo-pooing this the way that they have in the past by saying, oh, we don't see significance coming or whatever. So as long as it meets the expectations that are currently on the table, not only is this a big win for Trump in the short term, but I think there's going to be a lot of, like, you're going to see the polls start to turn. We're saying, wow, he's actually getting results for the American people.
He might.
I will give you the asterisks, but I think that everything's headed in the right direction. And everybody who second guessed his tactics and whether or not they had a plan, I'm going to be waiting to see how much forgiveness and they ask for here.
We'll see. All right, 11 o'clock this morning, the Bidens are live on The View here in Gotham City. There's a story in Politico today that says they've hired the former Pentagon spokesperson to manage the Biden comeback. I'm paraphrasing kind of that Joe Biden wants to be out there. The 100 days is over. He wants to be prepared for the books that are coming out that will be critical of him. He wants to speak out against Donald Trump. He wants to defend his reputation. Politico is also reporting that the audio of the special counsel Hur of his interview with Joe Biden that caused her to judge Biden an elderly man with a poor memory, that the Trump administration is going to release that audio and that Biden is gearing up to fight back on all fronts. Now, you could say, as we've discussed, Biden's doing this to fight back, or Biden's doing this for his reputation. I talked to someone very familiar with the Bidens, and I think they've pointed out something that I'm going to say now that to me is the explanation, or at least part of the explanation, which is Biden Inc. has collapsed. All those Biden grandkids had a lavish lifestyle, which they very much liked. Hunter made hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Joe, as a former president, is not in a position to get the same kind of paid speeches, corporate boards, book deal. Biden Inc. needs a source of revenue. And Hunter does, even though he was pardoned and he's not going to prison, Hunter does not have great earning capacity. And you look at the rest of the family.
Wait. The paintings aren't worth a lot?
No, the paintings are not worth a lot. So what I'm positing for you guys to weigh in on, Dan first, is my source right? Is what at least part of this is about, is the reality that Biden Inc., the trough is empty. The spigot has shut down. They need a way to get back in the game to make big money, to have the grandchildren fed and clothed and flown first class, etc.
It certainly could be. I think the challenge is at his age, kind of trying to like start a new career, so to speak, a new set of endeavors is very hard.
Who else is going to do it though?
Well, no, I mean, that's the thing, right? His brother's been under FBI, watch now. You've got Hunter's issues. It very well could be. I just think the challenge for him is in all of these appearances, and I'll add Jill to this. We know what everyone wants to ask him about why he dropped out, about his age, and at least maybe we'll see today something different. He still doesn't have good answers.
To be clear, the irony is I think he's going to set back the cause of Biden today.
Well, that was going to be my next statement.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Kind of just go, yeah. So
I agree, Sean. Let me say it this way: just imagine a normal family, a John Q. Public, the Public family. Okay, the Public family at one point between the patriarch's son and the patriarch's brothers, they were pulling in $10 million a year, maybe more. Right? What's Biden Inc. pulling in at today? I mean,
to quote the great LL Cool J, "Don't call it a comeback."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he was ever. I don't think he was ever there. So they're not. I mean, but to your point, I don't know where the grift is over, right? The big guy's not getting his cut anymore, and that's a problem. I get it. They've lived a very lavish lifestyle. The beach house, I got to imagine the property taxes aren't cheap. They're used to a certain lifestyle, but not just them. To your point, the whole family, it was coming from one source, and they lost their USAID funding, basically.
Yeah.
So this is a problem. I get it. But to your point, I don't see where the new source is. Number one, no one wants to know what he thinks. Number two, he doesn't know what he thinks. And that's a bigger problem. When he goes on The View today, to your point, when I watched that BBC interview, he just set himself back. And you
don't think the Washington Speakers Bureau and CA looked at that and said, man, that guy needs to be flown all over the country and the world giving $800,000 a pop speeches? No,
I think they looked at him and said, hey, we're in the middle of a briefing right now. We're going to get back to you.
Yeah.
After the company retreat, like
the family's income has taken not just a hit. It's gone from millions to I mean, I don't know what he's making now. He got that one paid speech, but that's
guess what? $400,000 a year as a former president.
Right.
Yeah, but it's nothing like that. I mean,
that's a couple months of Burisma. That's nothing.
I get it. But and by the way, just to be clear, they're also someone brought up the library the other day on this platform. You have to decide every day what you're spending your time on. Are you trying to put the kids in private school, or are you worried about where the library's going? Because you can't ask for the same thing multiple times. There are probably some people.
And I'm sorry, and just on that point, I've always thought he was going to have trouble raising money for the library because he's not been someone who's Not a good,
Right.
never been a good fundraiser, and the donors are not currently in love with him.
Right.
So that's a whole separate money problem
Right. But
for the Biden
when
family.
they give you your 3 things you're going to do today,
Yeah.
you got to figure out number 1 is pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
but
I just want to add though, because Mark, you said part of the, the Politico story is about how he wants to like take on Trump. He wants to, at least based on what he has said so far, he tried to again litigate the economy, that like things were great, which is just not how people felt at all.
right.
He doesn't have good answers, even on substance, right? Again, I go back to when Trump came back, he talked about inflation, he talked about the images at the border, which were real, and then Afghanistan. Like he had 3 issues that were in his wheelhouse. Biden is just like, just sits there and pounds the table like things were good. I did well,
look,
right? It's
in the spirit of bipartisanship, we got an hour and 45 minutes until the View starts.
Yeah,
so,
let's see
Mr. President, if you're listening, here's the thing. Instead of relitigating the past, how about you make some productive suggestions to the future, like highlighting the young people in your party and saying that they've got the fight, the Frosts and the AOC. I mean, he needs to do something that people actually go, wow, that was actually a good idea.
Right.
Or
all right,
you can't keep litigating how dumb the decisions were.
Closing this out, and again, if you have a question, please raise your hand if you're here on the platform. I want serious answers from both of you, not jokes, not hopeless. If Joe Biden called you and you were inclined to help him and he said, Dan, Sean, I need to make more money for my family. I need to leverage the assets I have as a former president to get the spigot going because we need more money. What one piece of advice would you give him of how he can leverage the assets he has to do that? Dan.
I'd say, sir, what are you most passionate about? What is it that makes you want to get up and make
He's most passionate about attacking Trump, but that's not going to make him any money.
No, but I mean, if it's foreign, like let's pick a subject because you got to believe in it. You got to wipe.
All right, he said NATO. How's he going to make money off of being passionate about NATO?
So I would say then go start your post presidency focus is going to be on like world relations and Europe and taking on Russia. Then set up a concurrent business of companies that have an interest in that. And you can both kind of advise, consult like PE funds that want to understand all the different angles of that issue because it affects their business. And then also try to do good, right? You can do both.
Yeah. All right.
You only have a few years.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm not sure that would gestate quickly enough for the grandkids. Sean, what would your advice be to buck rake?
I think there are 2 things. One, I mean, Dan's idea I get, which is maybe set up like the Biden Center where you pull in a lot of your former aides and let them do the work and you kind of grift off them. That's something that they could probably get behind. So it's you get all the Jake Sullivans or whatever. I mean, get a bunch of them, create this consortium where you're guiding. I mean, that's number 1. Number 2, potentially start to talk to some of the grandkids about running for office in Delaware because you probably have some good political capital there, but start to build the next generation of people that can say, hey, the Biden family's still in business. And then number 3 is, I think, start to create this elder statesman view of how do you do what you said you're going to do, pass the torch, highlight the next young people in the party, get seen as someone who doesn't litigate the past but looks towards the future. But I got to be honest with you, this is not an easy one.
Yeah.
Even if you want to be helpful to say, because part of what, as you know, I mean, you brought this up, the speeches and all this stuff, people pay. They don't want to, they're in a business. And if they can't make 15, 20% off a $100,000 speech, it's not worth their time for all of the logistics to go into it. So it's not a simple proposition that he's asking for. I think the other thing is you got to start thinking about leveraging Jill Biden still, I think, liked on the left by a lot of folks. Can she go out and do some stuff?
I don't know.
I don't know if she's ever made anything except her teacher salary. I have 2 things, and I did glance at the chat, and I've seen this in the chat, but I had them coming in. One is he'd have to write the mother of all tell-all books. He'd have to expose everything that Clinton's ever said to him, Obama ever said to him.
Oh, I'll tell you what, he
did.
If he went to Grievances, if that was the book, like if he wrote the book, that's what I'd give him a headline.
He'd need
Mr.
a
President,
ghostwriter.
write a book, call it Grievances. Tell everything about Pelosi.
No,
I'll buy it.
But he'd need a great ghostwriter. He'd need to make it like novelistic story of everything, and he'd need to burn every bridge. And number 2, he needs to put together some sort of dog and pony show for speeches that people would pay for, and it can't be centered around him. So I don't know what it is, but he needs some sort of thing that people would want to hire beyond hearing Joe Biden rag on Trump and tell Strom Thurmond stories. Those are the only two things I can think of, and I'm not sure they'd work, but that's that. All right. The president has a new Surgeon General nominee, Callie Means, who's Casey Means. Sorry, Casey Means. Callie's brother,
Callie's the
sister.
brother.
Callie's sister. Thank you. Casey Means, who is very popular with MAHA. She's a big supporter of Secretary Kennedy. Her brother is in the administration as a temporary government employee. She's perfectly qualified by the sort of standard metrics for be a Surgeon General, but she is being attacked by two, at least, very important MAGA voices. First, Laura Loomer, 105. Laura Loomer, who forced out the previous nominee on the eve of her confirmation hearings, says that Casey Means is, this is kind of a cryptic tweet, but she says, amongst other things, that she's not a Trump supporter. So Laura Loomer is against her. And somehow she still got the job, even though Laura Loomer is de facto personnel director at the White House. And then this is interesting. Ms. Shanahan, who was Bobby Kennedy's running mate, Nicole Shanahan, also extremely negative about this nomination, calls it strange, doesn't make any sense, and suggests that there's a rift between her and RFK, who she says she was lied to. So, Sean, can you decode this? Why is Donald Trump replacing one Loomer reject with another Loomer reject?
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, the timing of this, Jeanette's confirmation hearing was supposed to be today.
Yeah.
There are questions about her credentials, according to the media. I don't know that that's true or not, or whether that's just the excuse. But the replacement was so quick that I got to believe that something was in the thing. As a side note, just so everyone understands, Jeanette, the previous one, was Mike Waltz's sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So the question is, was she, once Waltz was out?
Waltz was promoted. He's not out.
I apologize. No, you didn't let me finish the sentence.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Once he was out of the White House and going to New York, did that have any impact on her standing? I think, look, Callie, as you mentioned, is an SGE, a special government employee serving at HHS right now. Very influential, not just with Bobby.
Recent guest on Two Way as well.
But he is also very, very influential in the MAHA movement writ large, right? He's does a lot of the dinners and a lot of the speeches. Her book, Good Energy, that he was a co-author on, was basically, I think, I know a lot of people give Tucker the interview with Tucker credit, and I think rightly so, but that book became a bestseller for a reason. It's phenomenal. I think that Laura probably just she's clearly able to take people out, but I don't know that they're looking for who to replace them with to her. And that seems to, and I only say that because clearly this pick was not run by her because she's going after her. The interesting thing, I think, if you look at some of Laura Loomer's tweets, is that it's both on substance that, she talks about her father and some of her personal behaviors, but also starts to question her credentials, like that she's not currently holding a medical license. Somebody's clearly, this to me will be interesting to see which one wins on this.
Okay, but Sean, just to decode here, if Laura Loomer is totally opposed to someone.
But remember, Mark, that's what I'm getting at. She gets to take people out. I'm not sure she's being consulted on who to replace them with. But
if you're the White House and you've just let Loomer veto yet another personnel choice, doesn't it make sense to say, hey, how does Laura feel about this person?
It does.
If you're going to give her a veto, why invite letting her publicly humiliate you again by saying, sorry, you can't have your second choice?
It's a great question, and I don't know that was vetted. I think that my guess is that because of Callie's access to Bobby and the prominence in the MAHA movement, it was just like, oh, we've got a great replacement. Look how quick that went. There wasn't I got to be honest, that to me did not look like that. That was hey, the other one's down. Who do we got in the bullpen?
Yeah, because they typically don't. Typically, most administrations, not just this one, if something like that happens, they say we'll get back to you with the replacement.
Well, look at Waltz, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a backup.
Well, they were at least trying there. They were trying.
Right, but my point on this one is they took her down, and then someone said, hey, you know what? We got someone right here who can handle it. Yeah. It's Callie's sister, who's a big, she's the name on the book. She's the one that. Yeah. So
Yeah, Dan, they can't deny the reality. Laura Loomer is the de facto personnel director. So
You stole my
I mean,
line.
yeah, I don't know.
I
How do they walk into this and say, well, okay, we're giving you your way, but now go after another one?
it just made me scratch my head. And by the way, there's this group MAHA that is very important to the Trump movement. That's very important to their future and their political coalition. You're kind of going to war with a little bit here. I mean, I don't think Laura Loomer's MAGA. I don't think she's MAHA, and so she's kind of throwing arrows at another person. So I'll be very curious because the fact that Laura Loomer seems to pop in and pop out and then publicly kind of like put scalps on mantles, that like I got people when Trump doesn't like it when it's seen as not him but other people. As a Democrat,
Yeah.
I enjoy this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the
All
thing
right.
that I find fascinating, by the way, about this whole thing is when it comes to purity, which I've always found fascinating in MAGA world, right? Like you look at, I mean, look at Bobby and look at Tulsi. I mean, the idea they ran in the party opposite him and attacked him, and they are now a cabinet level position. So I find it fascinating sometimes the purity level of when you joined or how pure you are, because there are people who've come in and out of MAGA world that clearly are not 100% pure, but for some reason or other get a pass or get brought into the fold deeper. Um, I think that I would not go so far as to say she is the personnel director. I think in some cases she is exposing cracks in some of the system in terms of the decisions, and they give excuses. I mean, look, she was used as a heat-seeking missile to take out walls. I
Yeah.
don't think I don't know how much of a play she had in the previous Surgeon General nominees standing, but we'll see. I think, by the way, I don't think that the Casey thing will work. I think Casey's standing within MAHA is strong enough that she's going to.
I do too. I do too. Just to be clear, Sergio, I was being hyperbolic for humor effect when I said she was the de facto personnel director. She's not. She's not really, but she has a lot of influence. All right, international potpourri. Let me just run through headlines, and you guys comment on one or two, whatever you want. The president yesterday seemed to make a verbal concession to Iran about what the final terms of any negotiated settlement might be. She is in Russia today with Putin visiting. Putin's declared a 3-day ceasefire. And Vladimir Zelensky went back to his go-to social media style, walking the streets of Kiev today, 103B.
Кожна українська родина сьогодні має героя, який боровся чи бореться з новим злом, бореться за нашу Україну, наш Київ, за всі наші міста, села, за наших людей, за наше життя. І ось це дуже важливе місце, місце пам'яті показує, чому це життя, чому Україна живе, чому вона сильна. Героям слава! Дякую дуже.
For those of you listening and not watching, he basically just walked the streets and talked about the importance of place and solidarity, and ended with a shot of a little girl. Iran, Pakistan continues. India, Pakistan continues to be a tinderbox, and indications the Trump administration is doing their best to tamp that down, with Tulsi Gabbard and others in communication with at least the Indian side. So, Dan, thoughts on whichever of those you'd like to briefly weigh in on?
I think the one that's most interesting is the China-Russia meeting, just because it both, the question of how does Russia, if this war keeps going, sustain with munitions and financing and selling oil, and China, which is clearly trying to heat off the US's encirclement of it, is going to somebody. So that's the one I'm keeping my eye on, and Iran and Israel in the Middle East. It's three-dimensional chess.
I'm going to add to the list.
Yeah.
The conclave.
Yeah.
And here's why. Well, in all seriousness, so we've had the second vote today. If you look at the past several PANAF selections, you're basically between 2 and 5 days. So we're on day 2. We'll go into tomorrow. And I say that because once that happens, the eyes of the world are going to shift to the Vatican and talk about the new Pope. I feel like the media will obsess about how connected they are or not to Francis, what this means. for the future of the Catholic Church and the shift that occurred under Francis's leadership. So I will say this, like, I actually think that is going to be the defining moment. And here's why. It's not just the international piece of this, but Trump is going to make this big announcement today. They've got Bessett and Jamieson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, going to Geneva this weekend. All this good stuff. And the one thing that we didn't talk about today, that again, where I think Trump is crushing it on doing things that actually impact people's lives, Sean Duffy today, with all the congressional leaders, the industry leaders, is going to announce the reform of the air traffic control systems. And, you know, I literally had someone the other day that I met with who was flying through Newark. And if you are in the flying public right now, the delays and all that kind of stuff, Real ID, like, this is impacting you. And Sean Duffy announcing what this administration is going to do is huge. And I think as a Trump guy, here's what my concern is. They're doing all of these great things today. You got Trump announcing 10 o'clock, the trade deal, Duffy doing the thing later today, then the trade stuff, and then the conclave. I assume, if past is any indicator, that within the next 48 to 72 hours, we have a new PONIP. It overshadows all that.
Yeah.
And he finally has a really good 48, 72 hours of great news that gets underreported. So I think this is going to be interesting how much sometimes they've got to think about how the cadence to some of these rollouts. And I know some of it you just can't do. You can't say, when are we going to get a UK deal or a deal with India or Pakistan? But they gotta figure out how to really get that cabinet engaged today, amplify the good news, and then double down on what Sean Duffy's going to do later this afternoon.
Yeah, and to highlight your point, all three of us are, after the program, flying to Rome and anchoring the program tomorrow from Vatican City. So we'll see you there. Kidding. All right, two other topics real quick, guys, and then we'll get to everybody's questions. So if you want to get in the conversation.
In order to make sure, we're all going to fly through Newark, so we're not going to make it.
Exactly. We'll be doing the show from New Jersey. Raise your hand if you want to get in the conversation. Again, eager to hear from new people. Campus protests, Colombia. I've been asking for weeks, why are there not campus protests against not just the Trump administration and Israel, but against the incumbent university administrators who are, in some cases, making deals with the administration. Yesterday at Columbia, there were protests occupying buildings, and Secretary of State Rubio, I'm not sure which of his four hats entitles him to tweet about what goes on at universities. We were reviewing the visa status of the trespassers and vandals who took over Columbia University's library. Pro-Hamas thugs are no longer welcome in our great nation. Guys, I'm just asking for your spidey sense because I know you're not doing deep reporting on the university protest movements, but do you think this is the first of many, or is this a one-off? Dan?
I think it depends how this is handled. If the police roll through there and bust this thing up fast, I don't think you'll see more of them. I think if they get attention and everyone's dilly-dallying, kind of no one wants to do anything, then you may see more.
Sean?
The one person I want to hear from is Kash Patel on this. See, I don't think, at least the university was distancing themselves really quick last night. These weren't students, I wonder who's funding this. Because that, to me, that wasn't some spontaneous student organization that did that. That is a George Soros-like, and I'm using that in quotes just to be clear. I don't know who's funding it, but that had all the trappings of a paid-for left-wing organization doing it. And so I think that if I had a recommendation to not just Rubio, it's to get the law enforcement team and the intelligence team looped into this and say, where is this coming from? Who's funding it? Let's go after the source.
All right. Lastly, New York Times, very long story by their kind of style writer. I almost never read his pieces because I find them to be like style pieces that are not filled with tons of style. Has a story about how Melania Trump is not spending very much time at the White House. Again, I see her presence on the east side here at Trump Tower quite a bit. Her son goes to school here. Dan, despite this New York Times story, she's not very much covered. This phenomena is known to most reporters and yet not covered. Is there kind of a zone of privacy extended to Melania Trump?
Yeah, I really think this is just like reading Page Six. It's gossipy, but look, I worked for somebody he and she did not spend a lot of time in the same city together. They still loved each other. They had a great relationship, but it worked for them. And so whatever works for the Trumps, they're entitled to privacy in their marriage.
Yeah, I think this is another. I mean, Sean McCreesh, who wrote the story, this just shows you that's a White House correspondent. This is all the news that's fit to not care about. The New York Times is embarrassing itself. I just, this to me, like, she's not elected. She's enjoying her life. She's being closer to her son where he is. And it's frankly, it's an embarrassment to the New York Times. It's a further reminder what a where it has gone as a paper of record. So,
well, I will just say all the speculation about the Obama's marriage, like, speculation in the other direction. So there is.
But I'll be honest with you.
Well, not to mention the Clintons' marriage.
Yes,
but I'll be honest with you. I
didn't want to reference who I worked for.
I can say this because I'm on the record saying it back in the Obama days. Like, Michelle Obama, whatever she wants to do, unless she wants to be in the public eye, and the same thing with the kids. You choose to enter the public life, that's one thing. But Melania Trump is not going out there making public statements that are getting critiqued. She's living her life.
Well, she is on occasion. She is doing an event with the president today.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you can critique what she says about foster care today.
Yeah.
But
just to be clear, the only reason I included this in our rundown is because I came up with the clever line, the gray lady and the first lady.
It was a great one.
It's the only reason. It's the only reason I did. Yeah. All right. Alex Sullivan, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what is on your mind for America's Morning Meeting. I like to call the show that, America's Morning Meeting. Alex.
Hi,
we're worldwide.
I am in Connecticut. I wanted to ask a question for you, Mark. I recently watched the All In interview between David Friedberg and Doug Burgum, and I spent most of my career in the commodity industry, and it was fantastic. And I was just wondering why there's not more media coverage kind of around what Doug Burgum is doing and how important the energy race is in also the AI race against China. It's a huge story. Friedberg did a great job. And I just think I'm just confused why it's not more in the media.
Right. I give you three reasons, then see what my colleagues say. Number one, cabinet secretaries in general, outside the big four of Attorney General, Defense, Justice, and State, they just don't get very much coverage. And fewer news organizations have beat reporters there. They just don't get very much coverage in general. So it's not just about energy and Burgum. Two, reporters who get the most space to cover things tend to be political reporters, and political reporters are largely ignorant of the complexities of energy. So if you ask most White House reporters, or even reporters who cover, the administration writ large, tell me the history of the regulation of nuclear power in this country, they'd have no idea. They just don't. And so this is an abstraction to them. And then finally, there is a lot of coverage of it. It's just not in, the so-called mainstream, right? There are a lot of specialty publications who cover it. And so those people kind of have the market cornered. So to take like a clean example, if you read Politico, you'd see very little coverage of Secretary Burgum. If you read Politico Pro, you'd see a lot of coverage of Secretary Burgum. And so those would be my answers. I'd include as a specific thing is he's a very lovely man, but he's not a magnet for coverage, right? He's not known to a lot of reporters. He doesn't seem to go out of his way the way some of the other cabinet members do to get coverage. Sean.
So interesting. I agree with you, Alex. Like he's not just doing great things, but like I saw Doug Burgum the other day. He came in and he was all dressed down probably, but he still looked, appropriate. And he was like, sorry, I was out at a fracking thing in West Virginia. Then he went out to an oil rig. I mean, this guy is a guy of action, and I love it for all the things that he's doing. But I agree with you. Like, I actually thought Mark was going in a different direction, which is, I think most of these reporters don't like covering anything that's not them. So when these guys go on the All In podcast, and we've talked about it before, that some of the community members here brought up the previous interviews with both Besant and Lutnick that I think were fantastic, right? Other reporters I always find are jealous about covering what other people cover. So it's almost like once you say there was a profile of someone in another publication, they almost shun it. Most of these guys, it's funny, I've got this test that I do with a lot of reporters where I'll ask them about their media diet. And I'll say, like, do you know who Tim Pool is? Do you know who Dave Rubin is? Do you know? And they're like, no. I'm like, and that's the problem, is that they read themselves. Go down and look at when Politico on the weekend will make a list of like top reads. It's all themselves. It's like, go read this story in the Atlantic about someone who did something in, but they never actually cover anything outside their bubble. They're very, very confined to their own little world that they live in. And so anything that's outside of it, they almost don't acknowledge exists.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, it's just frustrating because it was such a like balanced conversation in terms of climate change and helping the poor, and I just like if the media would cover that, it might actually temper down some of like the rage. So
how long was the interview, Alex? Was it like an hour?
It was about an hour. Yeah. And it was just fantastic.
Yeah. So two additional things, and then Dan. First of all, it's hard to cover those topics in a normal, regular media context, right? 800-word story, 1,000-word story, or a 2-minute TV segment. The stuff he's doing takes a long time. And then reporters, for the most part, in Washington and New York, they don't really think about the energy industry. Maybe if there's a flood and their lights go out in their Hamptons house, but for the most part, they're just not focused. Just the way they're not focused on immigration. It's just distant from their life in a way that it makes it not top of mind. Dan.
Alex, I think there will be more coverage of this if and when the reconciliation bill passes, because a chunk of it is going to be on energy. And I think one of Trump's successes in his first term was he did kind of kickstart a lot of the domestic productivity that allowed manufacturing to come back because it was cheaper. Sources of energy were cheaper here, and it made the kind of arbitrage of doing stuff in China between shipping costs and everything a little bit more prohibitive. But I think part of this too is when you get into talking about climate change and other things, there's part of the Republican Party that doesn't like those conversations. They don't. And so I think there is a line that they walk in terms of highlighting, what Trump is doing with the kind of realities of the world and investments that need to be made. Because one of the things Trump wants to do is take apart some of the energy initiatives that Biden did that by all accounts are not partisan. They're good for our future. But we'll see.
All right, Alex, thank you. Grateful to you. Great question. Thank you for coming on. I asked Alex to unmute, but I didn't do that on purpose. Thank you, Alex. Andrew, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind. After you unmute, of course.
Good morning, everybody. First off, just wanted to say I love the pick of Casey Means as Surgeon General as someone that works in healthcare. I think that is such a great, refreshing thing. I was looking into I think the Nicole Shanahan part of it is very interesting. It seems like that from just a little bit of a Twitter sleuthing that I did this morning, it seems like that might be more of a personal beef than a professional beef. But overall, just really excited to see MAHA get some love here in the Surgeon General pick. On another topic, though, polling. I know we've talked a lot about polling on here a lot lately, and something that I've seen really interesting was the breakdown in the age breakdown on the polling for Trump approvals rating. And it seems like it's like the opposite of what it used to be for Republicans. So like Trump seems to do a lot better with younger people.
The Bidens are live on The View here in Gotham City. We got that one. Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Good.
I was watching myself on Twitter.
Wow, what a meta moment.
Yeah, go ahead. Apologies.
No, so I was just saying, like, it seems like it's almost the inverse of what Republican polling used to be. It's like the younger the people are, the more likely they are to support Trump, and the older the people are, it seems to be that they're not. I haven't seen as much coverage of that. So I really think as we talk about the future and like what it looks like for like someone like JD Vance, I think there's a young movement in the Republican Party, and I don't see as much media coverage of that, and it kind of gets buried down in the polling. And I just want to get your guys' input on what you guys think about that.
That's a great
anomaly.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up young people. You could say the same about Black voters, Hispanic voters, some categories of female voters. You could say that about working class voters. You could say it about men. Like, this is one of the big problems with the Democratic Party now. The media is enabling their keeping their head in the sand by not covering it. I mean, like when Barack Obama created the so-called coalition of the ascendant, and he moved many of these same groups towards the Democratic Party, Ron Brownstein couldn't write enough articles about it, couldn't write enough to highlight and to analyze why it's happening. Why are there these realignments? And because the press has cognitive dissonance, they can't understand it and they want to be in denial about it. The Democrats are too. It's a massive story. It's a very interesting story. It's a very important story, but it's not covered because neither the press nor the Democrats want to grapple with the reality of it or the reasons for it. Dan.
Well, I disagree that the party is in denial. I think the party's very aware of it. They are, and the party being the leaders of the House, the Senate, the kind of governors, like they are aware.
I agree they're aware of it. Let me clarify what I mean and go back to you. They're not having a public reality discussion to say we got to face facts, everybody. They're aware of it and they're paying lip service to addressing it, but they're not addressing the root causes. Sorry, Dan.
There is not a public that I would agree with you that one of the things that's missing here as the party gets out of the ditch is there needs to be a come to Jesus publicly with the base and an honesty that, like, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to get the same results and we need to make changes. I will say, though, Andrew, there has been, Trump's numbers have come down here by all accounts in the last, let's say, 15 to 30 days. Not huge, but, down to kind of that 42, 41, kind of where he traded toward the end of his first term at times. What is apparent now is that where that slippage is coming from is independents and young voters. There's some data about Latinos are getting a little wobbly because they're just so laser focused on the economy. I think Sean said it earlier, these trade deals may move them back. But one of the things I'm curious about is why are young people starting to get frustrated with Trump? I'll be curious. Now, do they come to the Democrats or do they just not vote? it may be the latter, but it is like we have problems with almost every demographic.
Sean.
I think it's a great question that you're asking. I would say this, they both have a reality problem, right? So you look at the leaders of the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn, still sort of Nancy Pelosi stepped down from leadership, but not out of the spotlight. And that was the problem. It was sort of like, I'll just be Oz hiding behind the curtain, pulling the strings. There's not, if Hakeem Jeffries had been able to kind of come into his own, I think it's different. But the fascinating thing about this to me is that for a party that I grew up in that sort of was always known as the traditional old school, old party, right? We have embraced the tactics. And I think that's two things that Trump has done that I think are really what gets credit for this is embrace the tactics. So going on long form podcasts, going to where the media is in a way that no one else has. And that's the thing is that you saw Alex just mentioning the All In podcast. You think about what Trump did during the campaign, Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, the Nelk boys, all this stuff where it's like, it's going to where people are. Yeah. And that's just, we talked about this when the DNC chairman was elected, like they're still not embracing this in the same way. There's just a disconnect. And then the second thing is just the policies. Like I mentioned this before, but Trump talks about things that people actually care about. I mean, it may sound stupid to a lot of old school political folks, but when he talks about pressure in your shower, people go, yeah, I get that. Like he talks about things that people actually deal with. And I think young people in particular like this idea that it's not this staid old, like, talking points and like there's an authenticity to it and an engagement that's real and different. And I think his background as a, where he's amongst people, like when you run businesses the way he does, and I've seen him walk through a club or a building, and he's talking to the workers, he's engaging with them. He just has so much of a better feel for engaging with people that most politicians, and it's on both sides, to be honest with you.
No, I agree. I think I see that, like, and that's even within talking about if you look at the protests and things and we talk about if it's astroturfing or not, everybody that looks like they're protesting looks like they're like 70 years old. Like they just don't look like it's the youth protests that we saw previously before. Like it's like all the people that protested the Vietnam War are back to, they got their legs again and they're coming back to protest Trump. So it just seems like the whole age inversion thing seems to be pretty obvious to me. But
no, there are some young people out there. Like the Sanders rallies have a lot of young people.
Yeah,
so they're not.
The Tesla protests it seems like the protests around the layoffs in DC, because I live in Maryland, so I've seen a lot of that coverage.
Yeah,
seems a lot of that was like Francis Collins out there like strumming on a guitar with a bunch of 80-year-olds. So
it's a beautiful mosaic in a big tent. The people outside Dan's house protesting are like 100. Those are old people. Andrew, thank you. Grateful to you. Dan, you didn't think that was funny?
I did. That was hilarious.
All right. Matt, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Oh, look at that.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
Great to see you,
Actually,
sir. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
We lost you.
Yourself again.
Hold on, Matt. Unmute
Yeah.
again.
You muted.
There we go. Alrighty, good to see you guys. Been a two-way tonight participant, but never in the morning meeting, so pleasure to be
counts.
here. My
Nice.
question kind of wraps in what Andrew just said, also a point Sean made and a point Dan made. So the younger Trump demographic, super interesting to me, especially with people like JD Vance. Sean, a piece of what you said, which is Trump's ability to relate to everyday struggles that connect more with people. And then Dan, seeing Trump's demographic between 18 to 29 slowly dwindling since he's taken in office. What I don't understand with Saul and Trump's ability just to pick these low-hanging fruits that relate to people, that one of the greatest things we have is that ability to do a tax deduction. Why are we not giving a tax deduction to 529 college saving plans with the amount of student debt we have? Why isn't that tax deduction being used for first-time home buying? Why isn't that tax deduction being used for car loan deductibility? You know, so I just think there's so much low-hanging fruit to be had here, and instead you're taking SALT, and SALT only applies to people that itemize their taxes. That's only 10% of people, and it helps people that are in these coastal elite cities of New York and California. So I just think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here. So my question to kind of wrap all this together is, why aren't they taking this low-hanging fruit and pursuing things like SALT?
They've already promised a lot of things. And part of what they've promised is Trump promised in the campaign, and SALT is required, must be addressed to get enough votes to get it passed, because there's some members who just have that as an absolute. And there's some portions of the Republican Party who don't like adding to the tax code. They just think that that's, and government engineering, and it's inefficient to play favorites that way. Those would be my answers. Sean.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, every tax cut has to have a champion or a constituency that makes it worth fighting for. And from a budgetary perspective, as they go through this, they've got to figure out which ones matter. And the biggest priority, number one, number two, number three, is to extend and hopefully make permanent the 2017 tax cuts. So that's that. Then two, to Mark's point, you're going to take care of Trump's promises. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. I believe, frankly, that those will be like tips up to $2,000 if you're between the ages of 27 to 27.5 on Tuesday the 5th. I mean, like, they will means test that, they will restrict it, but they will get it done, and that's the talking point. To your point, though, like, I mean, there's a million other things that you could have a tax cut for, and I get it, but someone needs to make it a champion. It needs to champion it, fight for it, and be willing to stake out other political things. And right now, there's only so much that can go around. That's probably the easiest answer. I will say on SALT, this is to your point about, like, when you started this, you said this question wrapped in this question and this question. SALT is political. You ask a very interesting question, right? Who cares about it? And it's almost less about who cares about it and where are they from. So the bottom line is we have a math issue here. We have a 4-seat majority, and you have enough people that care a lot about SALT. Mike Lawler, who was here last week, Tom Keene and Jeff Van Drew in New Jersey, a couple guys like David Valadao in California. You start to get to 5, 6, 7 real quick, and you realize if those guys don't get what they want, then you don't have anything. And the hidden gem in SALT is the following, and Mike Lawler's been the champion of explaining this, is Mike Lawler, when people say you have all the cards, he literally has the cards. Because his answer is, great, do nothing. Guess what happens if you do nothing? SALT comes back full force. Like, so if you don't want to play ball with Mike Lawler, he's not advocating, give me SALT, or I might take my ball and go home. It's, you don't do anything, I win everything. And so he literally comes to the table, not just with like a bunch of aces, but a second deck. And he's like, I'll play the other cards too. So I think that this is one of those really complicated political situations that's not as easy to just say, oh, what's the merits of it? He gets to say, either you come with me, and by the way, like Nickel Loda and a couple of those other guys, but like, or I don't have to do anything and I win everything. So you are forced to deal with those guys in a way that other champions of tax provisions don't have that leverage.
If you want to, thank you, Matt. Grateful to you. If you want to follow MAGA and what's going on, there's certain Twitter accounts, certain X accounts you got to look to. Okay, so Charlie Kirk has tweeted on behalf of Casey Means supportively. Yes, great Surgeon General pick. Jason Miller, who's not in the Trump administration, but is kind of the godfather of communications from the outside, he retweeted, put that up, please, Don Jr., just during our program. Jason Miller retweeted, wants everybody to make sure everybody knows that Don Jr. is supportive of Casey Means. So there's two of the three members of the board of what I call the board of directors. I'm pretty sure Tucker's supportive too. Tucker's had Casey Means on his show in a very watched interview. So Don Jr. I'm sorry, that's Don Jr. Don Jr. retweeting his father's post, and then Jason Miller retweeted that during the program, right? So there you got Don Jr., Jason Miller, and Charlie Kirk all on board. Now, Laura Loomer during this program has put two things on X as well. One, she tweeted on her own, replying to her own tweet. This is arguably witchcraft. You have no many texts I have received from doctors who are members of Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster who are like, WTF is this? This is honestly insane. I do not believe for 1 second that Donald Trump made this decision. I refuse to believe it. And she just tweeted in response to Charlie Kirk, this is a terrible pick who is more focused on selling her books and products on her website with her brother. Please do not support this pick for you as a Surgeon General. This is insane, Charlie. People can say, Mark, why are you talking about Laura Loomer? Laura Loomer sat in the Oval Office with the President of the United States and the National Security Advisor and said, these people need to be fired, and they were. Laura Loomer said the previous nominee to be a Surgeon General should be withdrawn, and on the eve of her confirmation, she was. So she's up against Charlie Kirk, Don Jr., Jason Miller, and she's saying this isn't the president's doing. Sean, I ask again, will this nomination go forward, or will there be a Loomer veto?
No, Casey Means will be confirmed as the next attorney, Surgeon
All
General.
right. Dan?
We need two sponsors, Popcorn and DraftKings, because this is awesome.
Yeah. I'm just going to be riding Twitter all day reading Laura Loomer's missives. All right, some things to tell you about.
By the way, this would be great to knock Biden off the front pages. We could just keep talking about this.
Yeah. All right. Dan?
Oh, man, I love X.
Dan, you texted me. Do I need to respond to your text? I didn't understand it.
Nope.
All right. All right.
He was saying, stop Googling yourself.
6 o'clock tonight on Two-Way Tonight. My guest will be the owner of the Los Angeles Times, who's been on Two-Way before, Patrick Soon-Shiong. We'll talk about the media. We'll talk about the Trump administration and take your questions. People generally seem to have a lot of questions for Patrick. So please join us at 6 o'clock tonight. And then at 7 o'clock, Michael Moynihan's show. This was a show that was done live earlier in the week at the Comedy Cellar at the Village Underground. So please join Michael for a conversation about free speech. You can see the great guests there, Nick Operino, Lee Rowland, David Kaufman, Charles Fane Lehman, all live, done live at the Village Underground. And that'll premiere live on YouTube on Michael's channel immediately after Two-Way Tonight. So do that. Also, one more thing, and then Sean, my new episode of Next Up, I'm talking to the Secretary of the Veterans Department, Mr. Collins, and I'll have some things to say about the Democratic Party that you won't want to miss. You can watch that on YouTube later today and wherever your finer podcasts are available. Sean, what do you have today?
It's Thursday. It's a panel. We're going to put up some white smoke here. Elizabeth Mitchell from the Daily Signal, Sarah Gonzalez from The Blaze, and then Dan Turrentine from a little outlet called The Morning Meeting. So it's 2-on-1 at 6 o'clock.
That's a tough booking. It's a tough booking.
Yeah.
Good. I look forward to it. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all for watching. Sean and I will see you at 6. Michael will see you at 7. And believe it or not,
Sean, Dan, and I will see it.
That's right. That's right. And the three of us will be back in 23 hours for another edition of The Morning Meeting. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.